So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the latest masterclass. And this month, I've got a great topic for you, something that I am super passionate about, something that actually I think is really needed because I see constantly challenges with this in workplaces of all sizes and all around the country where I work, whether they are government, whether they are large corporations, or even smaller businesses, husband and wife practices and businesses and solopreneurs. I am seeing this as a topic for everyone. And so I'm really excited to bring you some juicy ideas today, some concepts and things to help you go beyond burnout. Right. And so this masterclass is all about specifically how can you make just tiny little incremental shifts. Lots of people will know that I'm passionate about making small shifts in order to have a bigger impact, in order to address some of the challenges of our modern work lives. I'd like to begin, of course, by paying my respects to the traditional custodians on the land on which I'm honoured to live, work and play. I pay my respects to the lands that you are on, wherever you are in this beautiful country or around the world, watching and listening this either live or maybe you are watching later. And I really want to invite you, especially those who are on live, to please write down your questions as we go. And I've got a little reward for a question asker at the end. So please write down your questions as you go. And at the end, I'm going to open it up and we'll have plenty of time for conversation and discussion. I also say feel free to take a photo of any of the slides that maybe resonate for you. Feel free to post them on LinkedIn and tag me, AJ, Alexandra Joy, and I will send you the slides and the free resources. So take a photo, tag me, I'll see that, and I will send you any of the resources. If we're not already friends on LinkedIn, please connect with me now. So today's agenda is short and sharp. We're going to get into some small, powerful shifts to stop burnout before it starts. And then we're going to talk a bit about how do we lead without without sacrificing ourselves. What I see is lots of leaders and people who actually tend to sacrifice themselves in order to help others, to support their team and their staff. So I really want you to take away some practical strategies, maybe some tips and ideas of how you can create a thriving, supportive workplace culture, and also ways to just honor yourself and your own well-being, right? While you're still able to show up for your team, for your family, for your community, or whatever that might be, but not forgetting yourself amongst that. So I'd love to hear right now, drop a Y for those who are on live in the chat box if you have ever experienced burnout. So let me know in the chat, has anyone ever experienced burnout before? Is that something that's been part of your reality? Yes, yeah. Okay, you. So you know exactly what I'm talking about, that sadly, this is all too common, right? It's all too common for everyone. It happens all too often in workplaces. So seeing that many of you have actually experienced this, and pretty much I would say it is rare for me to meet a manager, a leader, or a team member that hasn't had some form of this in their work life at some stage. And so what we want to do is really think about, well, what do we do about this? And I wanted to share a couple of really brief stats and facts in the background that just help you think about why are we even talking about this. So we see that 71% of executives say that employee engagement is critical to their company's success, but they don't know how or what to do. It could be that they've tried different things and they're just not seeing results, or they're like, I don't even quite know where to start. We're seeing 69% of employees saying they'd work harder if they were better appreciated at work, but they can't find an employer that cares. We're seeing $8 billion, and this is Australia specific because I've done most of my research on this nation where I do most of my work. is the cost of depression for Australian employers from sick leave and also presenteeism as well as absenteeism. And what we're seeing is that means there's an increase in burnout occurring across our Australian workplaces. And so part of the, I guess, signs of what's happening if it's in our employees, firstly, is increased absenteeism, more and more health problems. We actually see less socializing, and this has certainly changed a lot since COVID, right? We see lots happening, lots different in the workplace since many people work from home now and just don't have those opportunities to bump into each other in the corridor. We're seeing people are still working excessive hours, that decrease productivity and poor job performance. And yet, what we're finding is nearly every organization is asking people to work more or to achieve more, but with less resources. And so many I see around the country want to fund the fix. Yeah. But they don't necessarily want to do the prevention work. And so quite often we're seeing things brought into workplaces to fund the fix. Let's just do a quick little mini massage for all the staff today, or let's have some kind of, a quick fun lunch. Hopefully that will fix the little issue that we're having or whatever it might be. But what we have to start doing is we need to actually do the prevention work. We need to think about what are the foundations that we need to lie in place in order to prevent some of this from happening. And essentially what we're seeing is a time bomb ticking. So of all of these 614 HR leaders, 95% of them in this study admitted burnout is a crisis amongst employees and leaders, and it is the leading reason for people leaving their job. And again, these HR leaders in this research don't know how to solve the problem. We saw that in the same piece of research, 81% of the Australian workforce is struggling with stress and burnout, which surpasses the global figure of 73%. So we're unfortunately leading the way around the world here in Australia with struggling with stress and burnout. And yet we used to always be called the lucky country, right? Not so lucky anymore when it comes to stress and burnout. And the challenge is that the estimate is that half of global employees keep it hidden from their employers, that they're concerned that their job might be at risk, that they might be treated differently, that there might be issues if they actually admit that they're struggling with stress. So I wanted to show you a really little brief clip about how we could be a little bit like some of these monkeys.
So a final experiment that I want to mention to you is our fairness study.
Are you guys hearing the audio on that? Let me share again. Oh, you were hearing it? Okay, great. Thank you. Who's in the background?
And so this became a very famous study, and there's now many more, because after we did this about 10 years ago, it became very well known. And we did that originally with capuchin monkeys, and I'm going to show you the first experiment that we did. It has now been done with dogs, and with birds, and with chimpanzees. But with Sarah Brosnan, we started out with capuchin monkeys. So what we did is we put two capuchin monkeys side by side. Again, these animals, they live in a group. They know each other. We take them out of the group, put them in a test chamber. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the two monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now, if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, that's a far better food, then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is a monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here.
So we see that maybe, just maybe, we're all a bit like monkeys in a cage, right? That we're seeing other people that seem to have this life-work balance. We're thinking that there must be another way, and yet we keep getting cucumber. Drop a Y in the chat box if you feel you've ever ignored the signs of burnout and you've just pushed through. Yes, right. So we unfortunately often do push through. We don't necessarily address when we're starting to see some of the signs of it. And I know that because I have absolutely done that myself. And not just that I pushed through or ignored it, sometimes I really wasn't even aware that burnout was occurring. And maybe let me know in the chat box, have you ever experienced that as well? Have you ever felt like, actually, I didn't even know I was burnout until it kind of got a bit worse, right? Yeah. Yeah, so that can often happen. It can creep up on us and we don't even have that level of awareness, right? Because we're so busy rushing on the hamster wheel. And so I get it. I did this too. And this was me a decade ago in 2015. I had adrenal fatigue, Hashimoto's, high cholesterol. I was pre-diabetic. I was stressed and I was sick and tired, despite the fact that I would have told you I was fine. And I kind of thought I was. I thought this is just modern life. We're all just rushing around doing things. And I thought I was on top of it. I also exercised every day. I still went for runs. I ate well and healthy, except I did like sugar. Let's be clear, I did like sugar and drank copious amounts of Diet Coke back then. And so I would have told you I was fine until the doctor started telling me I was not. And at that stage, just wanted to put me on medications, was like, okay, you're going to need cholesterol tablets, you're going to need things for your diabetes, you need to have an actual tablet for Hashimoto's or thyroid issues. So you're going to need to go on thyroxine. And also just told me to sleep better, eat less, and move more. And I was already kind of doing so much of that it felt really frustrating that even though my GP knew me, they were still saying that. And maybe you can relate to this as well. But the reality was I wasn't really very vibrant. I was pretending, and most of the time I was trying to fool myself in order to keep going. And I really want to encourage you to not get to that point. And so let's have a look at how can we face the reality and go beyond burnout, just one tiny incremental shift at a time. So think about it for a moment. What will your next 10 years look like? We're in 2025. So I want you to think about 2035. I know that sounds horrifying, right? The idea of writing that already, even 2035. But I want you to think about what will the next 10 years look like? Will it be this or this? right? If you don't move more, will it be this or this? This or this? What would you like to be the environment that you're in? How do you want to feel and show up? Do you want to have more time for family and less in the cubicle? And what do you want your community to look like? Is it just going to be the commute on the road, or are you going to be connected to where you live? What I have discovered, and I know for sure, is that only rats win the rat race, right? We need to start making small shifts. It is imperative upon us. We're also creating, I think, an environment that's not necessarily healthy for the next generation either, where we're already seeing burnout. We're already seeing one of the highest, most medicated generations ever in our history coming through post-COVID. So we're seeing 16, 17, 20-year-olds all medicated for mental health, for stress-related illnesses and inflammation. And so as I was saying before, burnout doesn't just hit like a bolt of lightning. It certainly didn't just hit me one day. It crept in degree by degree. Yes, and ADHD, huge diagnoses now, although still not presenting in Australia as much as it is around the world yet. But I think the wave is coming. And so maybe you felt this as well, where things just crept in a little by a little. Yeah. And so I'm interested to hear, what are some of the signs that you first notice before you reach burnout, before you feel overwhelmed? Give me just an idea of what it is that you notice that happens to you first, or have you noticed any signs and symptoms? Have you noticed things creeping in? What have you noticed? So I'd love to just hear from any of you, what are some of the signs or things that you've noticed in yourself? Bit irritated and tired, absolutely. It could be that you're a bit more snappy at work, or things frustrate you that didn't bother you before, right? Oh, lack of energy for the fun stuff. Yeah. And don't we want to be able to go home from work and get into the fun stuff, right? You don't want to eat. Oh, wow. Yeah. So you've experienced that before, and having no energy. I know for me that no energy part, although I still did everything, that's the irony, is I still pushed through. I still tried to show up for everything, even though I felt like I didn't have the energy. I still filled my calendar, filled my weeks. And when I first started, I started to look at maybe I've got to run more, maybe I've got to do more things, maybe I've got to cram more in. And that couldn't kind of be further from the truth, that it's not about pushing harder, it's actually about slowing down. And that can be super scary if you're a bit of an A-type personality. The thought of slowing down seems counterintuitive, and we start to feel like that's what I do. So we have to start thinking about, what are those signs? Oh, this one doesn't want to play today. And so some of the things that I've noticed is that we're becoming addicted. We're adrenaline addicted. We are addicted to that cortisol spike. We're addicted to feeling worthy, feeling like we're contributing, feeling like we're delivering on things. And so what we notice is, if you start over promising, right, even by just a little, then what we want to start doing instead, and it sounds really strange and counterintuitive, is to deliberately underpromise, right? Regardless of what's going on around you, start going, actually, I can't have that to you today. I'll get it to you on Monday. Or I have this and this on. Which one would you like first? Because I can only do one at a time, right? If you start noticing that you're arriving exactly on time or a little bit late, then you want to start leaving a little bit earlier. And people go, but my calendar's crammed, everything. we can always make time or space. Because if I said to you and you had a child, your child just got taken to the emergency department, it's not super serious, but they're there waiting for you, I'm sure you could make 15 minutes to rush to the hospital, right? Because you would. So there's always choices we're making. And it's just that if everything's cutting too fine, then somehow our priorities are wrong. And what happens with that is that sense or that feeling of always just getting there on time, or having to text and say, I'm running late, I'm going to be 5 minutes late, is actually fueling more of this cortisol. It's fueling more of our addiction to the adrenaline. And so what we want to start doing is seeing how can we start identifying those little habits or things that we're doing. I've said here, maybe cut down on some of the non-essential projects. Maybe you have too many goals. Maybe you've got too much on your plate. Yeah, maybe you're rushing around. And what happens is, even with executives and teams, I see boards of directors I work with, and they will have a corporate plan where it has 16 goals. And I'm like, even if you have 2,000 staff, how the hell are you going to keep your eye across 16 goals and keep all of those plates in the air spinning? So we really need to start taking stock of some of that. I have a full 2-page adrenaline addiction handout that I'll make sure I can give you more info on how to get that at the end. So most of us don't even realize that we're in burnout until we're actually like this, running on empty. And that's why I teach the shift model, which is a simple, really simple kind of state changer to stop you when your nervous system is going off rails. Because this is kind of step one, is we want to address what's going on in our nervous system. And so when I experienced all of this a decade ago, I then spent 3 years in my recovery process, 3 years healing my gut lining, 3 years avoiding having to go on thyroxine. I now am completely unmedicated, don't take any of those medications my doctor had wanted to put me on at the time. And instead, I said to her, give me 3 months. And then it was another 3 months. It took me 6 months to turn things around enough for her to agree not to be medicated. And then really, it took me about 3 years to fully recover. And I still have to monitor and watch that. I still have Hashimoto's and thyroid issues, but I manage them and keep them in control. And when I was doing the research, I discovered the blue zones, which is all about people who live to be over 100 around the world, and they live really well, right? They're living life to its fullest. They're not just sitting around aging. They're actually still engaged in community. They're still physically able to do a lot, and they're very happy, healthy. So I started looking at them and what were some of the secrets. And I also went and studied yoga and yoga therapy, which is the Ayurvedic medical side of yoga. And I started to do the unthinkable, to slow down, right? To calm my farm a little, and to start making these tiny shifts so that I could help my dear nervous system recalibrate. And that's what most of us who are A-type or running on empty need to learn to do, is to regulate our nervous system. It is absolutely the most important thing we can do as a leader as well, because when you're leading from a depleted adrenal and nervous system, you will not lead in a conscious and caring way. So I developed my own roadmap called the 10-degree shift, which I know some people are already familiar with, which looks at all the elements that make for healthy individuals, healthy teams, and therefore healthy companies and communities. And the whole premise of this is to do less and be more. Because at the end of the day, when we're, getting near the end of our life, again, no one says, I wish I worked more and did more. We all say, I wish I hung out with those that I loved more. I wish I went to the opera or the ballet more. I wish I walked in the country more. And so this is all about how can we make tiny little shifts so that just like when you set sail on a boat, a 1-degree shift in their navigation for a boat can mean that they end up in an entirely different continent. And so this is playing the long game, which is what being a good human and a great leader is all about, right? So we're going to make a little shift together. This is a super simple way to regulate that nervous system, because quite often it's getting hijacked and we don't know how to regulate so well. It's not taught so well, and it's not always talked about in workplaces. So let's make a shift together. To do this, you might need to put your pen down for a moment and have your hands ready. So I'm going to invite you, as you watch along, to actually play along and feel it in your body. So first, we're going to do an S, which is stop. And in order to do that, and what I might do is just share myself. So we're going to start with a stop, right? So this is part of the shift. We're going to spell shift, and first is to stop. So that's what you want to do first, is to think about, what do I need to stop? What are the things that aren't serving me? And I need to just stop in the moment, in the now, and go, I need to change. Yeah. So we're going to stop. And this is a pause to buy you some time. Hold. So the H in shift is to hold. If we stop and then hold, we give our nervous system enough time when it is being hijacked to at least come to an even equilibrium, at least enough that we can start to switch on and our amygdala aren't going crazy in our brain, so that we can start to breathe and think. Because if we're not stopping and holding for a moment, we're going to act and react from the wrong place. And we're going to act and react through a chemical storm that's going on in our body. We're then going to intuit. So we're going to intuit, we're going to feel in our gut what's happening, what's going on. How does my gut respond to this? And if you've ever trusted your gut or not trusted your gut before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying you're going to intuit. Then you're going to go to your heart and you're going to feel. What do I feel about this? What am I feeling right now? It could even be, I'm noticing that my heart is racing now. I'm noticing that I've got pins and needles in my hand. I'm noticing a pain in my head, right? How do I feel? I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling completely overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I can't make it through this. So notice how you feel. Take that moment. And then we're going to think. So quite often for leaders, they come across a challenge when they're in this state and they go straight to the brain, straight to think. But until you've stopped, held, intuit, and felt, when we just jump to think, it will often give false results. What happens is when we calibrate through the body first and then we get to think, we're interpreting all of the data that we just got through those first processes. And so our thoughts are going to be much smarter. And then we choose. Then we make a decision about, how am I going to move forward? What's important now, right? So think about it. Do it with me. It's stop. We're going to stop first, right? Then we're going to hold. So we stop, then we hold, which allows, and if we hold for up to 90 seconds, it will allow the chemicals that are going on in your dear body to actually settle down, right? So 90 seconds is all it takes, is a little decision buffer that at least lets the chemicals breathe out of your body, so then you can start making smarter decisions. It regulates your nervous system. The breath is a gift. Then we're going to intuit. We're going to feel into our second brain, right? Our intuition is in our gut. Our gut brain is just as smart, if not smarter, than the brain upstairs. So we're going to listen to the body's data. What is this telling me? What is it telling me about maybe this other person? Maybe you're in a situation and you're like, something doesn't feel right about this. You know, my gut's telling me that they're not telling the truth, or my gut's telling me that they're going to use this against me, right? Whatever it might be, my gut's telling me that something's going on for this person that's beyond what's happening right now in the workplace. So we want to listen to our body's special data that it's telling us. We want to feel and get into a spot of heart coherence. What am I feeling? How am I noticing this in my body? The more than our heart and our brain are in coherence, the better, smarter decisions we make. This heart coherence is what is taught to FBI agents. It's what is taught to elite military teams. It's what's taught to interrogators. It's taught to monks as well as priests. Because when we're in complete heart coherence, where my heart and my brain are starting to move together, instead of, as you can see here, when I'm frustrated, my heart rhythms are inconsistent and they're incoherent. But when I'm in appreciation, when I'm in pause and reflect, I'm going to allow, I'm going to think, we smooth out the heart rate. And so then everything in our body starts to work better. So then we can access a much kinder place. When people are in this space, they're far more conscious and they're far more caring about how they choose and make decisions. You're able to zoom out to a broader perspective than just the narrow field of what's going on in front of me. And so we want our emotions in the moment of something, whether that's sadness, happiness, overwhelm, frustration. Oh my gosh, I can't handle this. We want the emotions to be our guide, not your override. So we don't want to be derailed by our emotions. We just want them to give us feedback so that we can start making these smarter choices. Then we think, right? So we stop, we hold, we intuit, we feel, then we think. Then we focus on, what can I do? Now I've regulated my nervous system. I've taken a moment to come into this moment. What can I do? And I love to say, shift your thinking just a little. Start making it more a positive, affirmative thing where you're going, I'm choosing to do this, or I get to do this. How good is that? I'm getting to do this. I'm choosing to say no to this request. I'm choosing to take time out for now. I'm choosing to not respond to this issue, or I'm choosing to think about my words carefully, whatever it might be. So we want to shift our thinking to, I choose to and I get to, much more constructive ways of thinking and leading. So it's stop, hold, intuit, feel, think, then you choose, right? So hopefully that shift might give you something to think about after. And this might be the screenshot to take if you're wanting to remember. This is kind of a biohacker for really stopping yourself when you're in one of those moments where you're like, I need to stop because I can feel everything starting to get overwhelming, right? So this is how we stop the burnout and overwhelm in the moment when something's actually going on. And so I want to paint a little scenario for you for the moment, right? I want to just think about imagine for a moment you're going to walk down to your favorite place, and let's just say you're going to go and walk down to the beach. Okay, think about your favorite beach for the moment, somewhere you like to visit, somewhere where you notice the birds are singing, right? The sun is coming down, there's a breeze blowing, and you can almost smell that salty air of the sun. There's some little flowers growing, right? And so there's this beautiful scene. Maybe it's a weekend, you're completely relaxed, you're not thinking about your diary or your agenda, you're actually just living in the moment. And then you see this sign. Okay, so you see a sign, and my dear friend Dr. Ashley Morland, who is a neuroscientist, shared this with me, this actual principle of, then you see a sign that says snakes are sighted in this area. So think about it. What does your brain focus on then? What do you notice? Where's your brain going as you head down this path to the beach? I am guessing that this is what your brain's thinking. What kind of snake? Where are they? Anything that moves, you see a leaf blow and you're like, is that a snake? Right? So we start to get into this where we're hyper vigilant, we're hyper alert. We're like, I'm on alert for a snake. We even start thinking, will I even go down the path or will I not? And what I want you to understand is that a traumatized, stressed, or burnt out brain does exactly the same thing. So if you have employees, yes, our brains are programmed to protect us, absolutely. If you've got yourself or employees where there is some trauma, some stress, some burnout happening, they're going to see every email, every request, every come to my office, every meeting as a potential snake, right? Because my dear body can't regulate the nervous system. My brain is on overdrive. And so everything is a potential threat. And so when we're in that state, we react so differently. Yeah. Would you agree? We react differently. And so when we start to go, let's create a psychologically safe workplace, we begin with ourselves and then we create that for others. Then we can start to smell the roses, hear the birds, notice the smell of the ocean, see the flowers, and stop worrying about the snakes again. Unless we create this psychologically safe place, both at work and inside our dear body, we're going to continue to be on hyper vigilant, hyper alert. And I want you to have a workplace and a workplace experience where it is more in the rest of digest, where maybe we have some peaks of pushing to get some deadline done, but then we can come back to our equilibrium, where we're not just like I was frying my telomeres and my life exactly. So when we fry our body, when we're in burnout, we actually are shortening our life. Every single moment, we're shortening our life expectancy. And I don't want that for you. So when we're in rest and digest, we're more conscious, we're much more compassionate, we're able to actually get perspective and not be in a threatened place. Now, most company cultures, the bulk of my work is in leadership and culture. Most company cultures I see primarily are down here. They're in the zone of disengagement or disagreement. There's competition going on. There's blame. Maybe there's hyper competitiveness. There are a lot of anxious people. There are also maybe people who are retractive, who are withholding themselves, who are not participating fully in meetings or sharing ideas because they're like, I'm a bit concerned that person might be out to hurt me, right? The whole snake idea. And so often they're retracting. We also get people who are just unconscious. And so they're going around blaming others, pointing the finger. Maybe they're just bumbling around doing things and going, I don't know how to do it better, but I'm not going to put my hand up, right? So what I see is that. And what we want to do is move to here, where people are empowered, where they're cooperative, where they co-create the future, where they're really conscious about, I love coming to work, I'm creating this, I'm productive, I can be completely compassionate for others, right? And I'm aligned. I'm aligned with the vision and the values of the organization. I'm aligned with my own self and where I want to go. And so what we want to do is tip from being a contractive kind of workplace into an expansive one. We want to start moving into more conscious, uplifting zones. And so I'm curious how many of you are in management or leadership positions, right? Do you have others reporting to you? Are you responsible for the welfare of other team members? And we actually have legislation now, right, through workplace safety legislation that says we have to create psychologically safe workplaces, not just from slips, trips, and falls and physical accidents, but we have to create workplaces that are psychologically safe. So if you're in a management position, I want you to really start thinking about what role can you play in supporting your team to prevent burnout. Start with you. And what can I do for my team as well, right? What are the early signs and symptoms in them? How can I support people to speak up and speak with? How can I help people maybe identify their own burnout and start to see if they're moving that way? Can I create an environment where people feel free to speak up if they feel their workload's too much or something's out of their scope? So there's some Mayo Clinic research that I absolutely was blown away by and a bit surprised. And it's all about career well-being and creating this sense of people who really feel good about their work. And so what percentage of time do you think you have to love your work? I'd love you to pop in the chat box. In order for you to have good well-being, how much of your work life do you think you have to love your work? Like, is it 90%? Is it 10%? What do you think? How much do people need to love their work? You know, I was really surprised by this research because what it shows is it's only 20%. That's right. We only have to love our work 20% of the time, literally, in order to have a great work experience. So if it went up to 80%, people just still love their work. However, if it dropped down to like 10%, that's when you saw absenteeism, presenteeism. It's when you saw bullying and harassment go up. It's when you started to see people having sick days and all those sorts of things. So the research showed, and the Mayo Clinic did it on doctors, nurses, and allied health. They studied about 2,000 people. And what they found is you only have to love your work 20% of the time. So another tool I'd love to offer you, and I can explain later how to get this, is just a leader's 20-minute check-in. So if you're checking in with your team, you know, and you're probably asking already, what are you working on? Where do you need my help? What's the status of your projects? I want you to think about adding in these few questions. One is, what did you love doing this past week? And the other is, what did you loathe doing? And maybe you've got your own template for meetings and you could add this in. And I get it. Like, when we hear what work people love doing, we can't necessarily change their whole job to just do that stuff. We all have to do admin or things that we don't enjoy, right? But if we could go, what do you love and how can I start shaping maybe a little bit more of that into your role so I can get you to the 20%? And what did you loathe doing? And well, is that because you need some more training? Is it because it really isn't in your strengths? Is it because you're already overwhelmed? Is there someone else maybe where that's their love job and your loathe job? And could we do an exchange of some of the tasks of your role? Could we just think about creating more of a workplace where people get an opportunity to love their work at least 20% of the time? Let's face it, that's like a couple of hours a day or one day a week. So it's not a high benchmark in order for people to feel engaged and love their work. So maybe that's something that you want to introduce and think about, is these two questions into your normal check-in. And really, you just have to start with you. I'd love you to take a moment now to just write this phrase down on your notepad or wherever you're writing notes. And so imagine it's a year from now. And so I want you to write, today is the 3rd of April, or whatever date it is, whenever you're watching this recording. And I am. So write down a year from now's date, and then I am. And I want you to write down, how am I feeling? It's a year from now. How am I feeling? Yeah. When you think about your own well-being, your own sense of overwhelm, your own work-life balance, I want you to write down, I am, and what's the positive that you want to see. And then I know this because, and write down some of the dot points of evidence that you would see. What evidence would show you that you are that way? Maybe it's, my cholesterol's under control. Maybe it's, I can do my belt up one more notch. Maybe it's, you know, I can actually go for a walk with my dog and do an extra kilometer a day and not be puffed. Perhaps it's that board meetings or things that maybe derail me a little bit now feel easier to do. Yeah, I feel more positive. Maybe it is that I get more time to spend doing those nice things with friends and family that I really wanted to make more time for. It could be just completely around energy. And then my secret extra tip is to go and type that into whatever AI app you use. Let's just say, for example, ChatGPT. Type in that today is this date and I feel like this. I know this because of this evidence. And then ask it to write you a simple week by week plan or month by month plan. Tell it to create a plan that looks after you, mind, body, spirit, in order to get there in a year's time. you'll be amazed at the sorts of things it will come up with. If you have lifestyle things that you love, like you like to cycle or you like to surf or something, make sure you add those into, right? And see what it comes up with a plan for you. All right. So I'm going to jump out of the recording now, and I'm going to invite questions from those who are here.